Happy Friday the 13th. You know why you're here. All 11 Friday the 13th movies in 11 minutes. Let's do it. The original Friday the 13th is a solid revenge slasher that was the start of a phenomenon. While this movie isn't considered to be an all-time great, it's still a pretty well-made film that has an all-time twist. Many consider this to just be a Halloween ripoff, but it takes a lot from Psycho and Jaws as well. While made on a shoestring budget, it actually has some good cinematography and POV shots that makes it feel more immersive. The writing and characters aren't top notch, but it does enough to get you invested. Young 20-somethings are hired to rebuild a camp where a kid drowned years before, people start dying, you don't see who's doing it at first. And then it's revealed to be Jason's mom. Pamela Voorhees, who is doing what it takes for the camp to never reopen again, is still kind of a what the F twist that still works today, especially when you see how the rest of the series plays out. Betsy Palmer, who plays Pamela, is pretty great, and her motivations actually feel really grounded compared to the rest of the series. Maybe Friday the 13th ain't an all-timer, but it's still a good slasher with its blended inspiration, sincere filmmaking, and a bat-crazy Mrs. Voorhees, so this gets 8 out of 10 hockey masks. Friday the 13th Part 2 is sort of a whatever sequel to me. This movie has doubled the budget of the original, and yet it kinda feels cheaper. It's not surprising that this sequel released in less than a year of the original's release date, so it definitely feels undercooked. Jason's beta design definitely gets a kick out of me, and is most definitely a look, but that's kinda how you know the series is still figuring itself out after beheading Mrs. Voorhees, so they've just brought back Jason, her dead son. A lot of tropes of the series get introduced here, but it's all improved upon in the future. The most memorable thing to me is the finale where Jason has his mom's rotting chopped off head and one of the girls is being chased by him, so then she just pretends to be Mrs. Voorhees, and it actually works for a bit, and Jason's like, oh, it's my mom. Overall, Part 2 is a cash-in sequel that coasts off the success of the original, with Baghead Jason and a funny finale being the highlights. 6 out of 10 hockey masks. Friday the 13th Part 3 is definitely a step up from Part 2. The film also released in 3D, and it shows. Once you have that knowledge that it's in 3D, there are so many laughably in-your-face shots that are meant for 3D. This is where the formula just kinda gets embraced and they just have a blast with it. There's gonna be a lake, there's gonna be horned up teens, sex, booze, drugs, and kills. Jason gets his iconic hockey mask and machete, and honestly, the film is fun. Jason looks good, and I can see why the design stuck. The 3D kills are just hysterical. Everything from the harpoon to the eye-popping kill is just pure cinema. The score here is great as well. The theme song is just pure 80s bliss, and I saved it to my spooky playlist. Overall, Part 3 is fun, and this is where the Friday the 13th series becomes a franchise it's known for. I wish I saw this in a 3D theater opening weekend, just having a blast with this. So this gets 7.5 hockey mask out of 10. Many consider Final Chapter to be one of the better ones. It concludes the concurrent storyline that started with the original, and is the start of a new arc with Tommy Jarvis. For me, this is a step down from Part 3. That one really embraced its goofiness, and this one is kind of more of the same. It's funny to see a George McFly, though, and baby Corey Feldman. Honestly, not a lot stood out to me with this movie. More horned up teens getting killed, woohoo. Corey Feldman's Tommy, though, is an interesting character. He has some sort of connection to Jason. When him and Jason have their standoff at the end, it's pretty cool with his shaved head and him slashing at him. Overall, Final Chapter doesn't do much for me except Feldman. There's still some fun to be had with it, so 6 out of 10 hockey mask. A New Beginning continues with a much older Tommy who is traumatized from Jason and is in a mental institution. This film is known for being on the more nastier side, and it definitely lives up to that. They actually kept Jason dead here, so there is a copycat killer afoot. The whole vibe is just pretty unhinged and sexual. The movie starts off with a pretty off-putting death, and it sets the tone. There's no Jason, just some mentally ill people doing crazy things. There's definitely some prolonged nudity that's kinda wild, so they definitely pull back on it in later sequels. I found this film to be a solid slasher that may not be a typical Friday, but it definitely reminds me of a grimy 70s film like Texas Chainsaw and Last House on the Left. It changes the formula a bit, and the kills have a punch to them knowing it's a normal guy doing it. I had a good time with the smutty A New Beginning. It's different, and its nastiness definitely had me more entertained than some of the other entries, so 7 out of 10 hockey mask. Jason Lives is one of the most fun slashers out there. Since New Beginning was so divisive, they literally went in the opposite direction and made it a more comedic, self-aware endeavor. This is the last of the Tommy Jarvis movies, but he's played by another actor again, and he's completely different in this again. He's sort of a little Bruce Campbell, Ash Williams type in this movie as well. Jason gets revived by getting struck by lightning, and he becomes a definitive version of himself, which is the superhuman ghoul. First off, this is definitely one of his best designs. CJ Graham plays Jason with such a comedic physicality. The moments when he's surprised by his own strength are hilarious. The James Bond intro, the paintball forest scene where he rips off the arm, and the three-way beheading, the mirror death, and when Jason keeps getting up from the shotgun blast are all such fun sequences. The final showdown between Tommy and Jason with the lake on fire is kinda badass as well. Overall, Jason Lives is a blast with an expressive revived Jason, hilarious kills, and it being a solid ending to the Tommy trilogy. 9 out of 10 hockey mask. Friday the 13th, The New Blood pretty much says screw it. We got people with powers now. That's right, a telekinetic chick faces off against Jason in this movie. I don't dislike this movie. It's essentially a trashy Carrie ripoff, which I'm not against. It's a pretty entertaining entry with an interesting main protagonist. This is the first time Kane Hodder plays Jason, who is in the next couple of sequels. The final showdown between Jason and the telekinetic girl is the highlight of this movie. Jason's design is also fantastic. I love the rotting corpse and his demon-like face with the chains. Overall, New Blood is sort of middle of the road Friday with a fun telekinetic twist and a badass Jason. 7 hockey mask. Jason Takes Manhattan is my guilty pleasure of this franchise. Yes, I get it. He's only in Manhattan for like 30 minutes, but to me this is one of the more fun entries. Jason on a boat is actually pretty fun and it breaks up the Crystal Lake monotony. There's actually some tension on the boat because you actually have nowhere to go. And to me, when they actually do get to Manhattan, it's actually one of the best stretches of a Friday movie. It's fast paced, all the kills are fun and memorable, and Jason being in New York is just so cool. Slashers in big cities need to be done more often. Then there's the absolutely classic scene with the dude boxing Jason and then Jason just punches off his head. It's all just so cinema and I just love it, and it's one of the best Friday kills. Jason Takes Manhattan to me is a straightforward Friday movie but in 2 different locations that brings a lot of fun and variety, so 8 hockey mask out of 10. Jason Goes to Hell is the worst film in the franchise. It's a misguided premise where Jason's body dies, but his spirit takes over people and those people kill in his place. Listen, I'm all for experimentation, but I'm half convinced this film is self-sabotage to end the franchise. There are some bright spots. The intro scene where Jason is trapped and killed by the FBI is pretty great. The whole sequence where Jason Goes to Hell is well done with all those hands reaching out for him. And then the final shot of the movie where Freddy's claws come out and take Jason's mask down to hell, teasing a possible Freddy vs. Jason movie. It's pretty cool. Other than that, the movie just flat out sucks. If the characters aren't forgettable, the acting is just bad. The only character that was kinda cool was Creighton Duke. That guy seemed to be the only one trying. But yeah, this is a stinker, and this would be the end of an era for this series, because while it doesn't end here, the series would go through a drought. Jason Goes to Hell is bad, so a 3 hockey mask. Jason Takes Manhattan is my guilty pleasure, but for some, it's Jason X. Listen, I'm not against campy sci-fi, but I feel like this premise is just a little too ambitious for the series, especially if they want to cheap out like the rest of the series. This film is pretty much a sci-fi original movie mixed with Friday the 13th. There's a badass scene where the android does flips and fights Jason. That was pretty funny and cool. The frozen head kill is absolutely iconic. Jason against the armed militia is also cool. Uber Jason looks pretty awesome as well. There is fun to be had with this one, but man, I feel even in 2002, the CGI didn't look great. The ridiculousness goes a little too far. Jason X is fun bad with a bonkers sci-fi twist, so I'll give it 6 hockey mask. The 2009 remake is essentially the first 3 movies condensed into one mean, lean, no-nonsense, slick thrill ride. This is probably my favorite Friday movie because it feels like a fully realized film in the franchise with actual production value, with a lot of care and reverence for the original films. This film hits even more after watching everything before it. I love how they recreated parts 1 and 2 as this extended prologue, and the main plot of this movie is a reimagined part 3. They recapture moments, kills, and shots with a modern Michael Bay sensibility that gives this movie a shot of adrenaline. Yes, Michael Bay's production company made this movie, and all of Michael Bay's excesses and flourishes fits so well with this movie. Y'all know I love Supernatural, so Jared Padalecki being here, as well as Daniel Panabaker from Disney Channel and CW are here, and they're already my favorite protagonists in the franchise. Like, yeah, this cast isn't winning Oscars, but they all have much more charisma than 90% of the actors in this franchise. The kills here are so much more fun and bloodier than ever. They pay homage to kills in the original with the late 2000s bloodiness. There's an all-time sex scene here, very stupendous. Overall, this was an amazing way to reintroduce Friday the 13th to modern audiences with bigger sex, bigger budget, and bigger violence. Unfortunately, due to licensing rights and development hell, we never got a direct sequel to this entry, and that sucks. What a shame, because I really do like this movie, and this would be a 9 out of 10 hockey mask for me. So yeah, those are all Friday the 13th movies. Where's Freddy vs. Jason? It's coming, alright. You just have to wait and see. Thank you so much for watching, and happy Friday the 13th. Goodbye.